So before we get started, I just want to show you guys how to actually roll up a polo wrap or even a standing wrap, just so it's properly prepared for you to start wrapping your horse's legs. Typically, when you first get a wrap, this is actually a standing wrap out. They're wrapped around with a Velcro on the outside, and this is nice and neat and tidy, but it actually doesn't do us any favor when we're trying to wrap their legs because the Velcro is going to be the last part that we put on their legs. So the easiest way to do it, I find, is to take the Velcro around, and you see your other sticky side right here, and I actually flip it upside down, back upon itself on the standing wrap, okay? And then I actually use my leg to do this, so this is gonna seem a little unconventional, but I'm gonna drop this down, and you just want to start rolling as tight as possible to get this standing wrap back in the correct roll so you can properly use it to wrap your leg. And there's using your thigh like this kind of keeps it flat and pulled out and lets you roll it up quicker and tighter. That's the thing. I find a wrap that is rolled tighter is much easier to use. I want to talk to you about the different wraps that I'm going to cover this evening. They all have, similar usages and can be used to protect and support the limb, but there are different types that you can find out there to use your horse and help use this to decide what's right for you. So I'm going to start with the two most basic exterior bandages, okay? So this one is a polo wrap, and it's probably the most common thing you're going to see to use horses' legs wrapped, okay? It's kind of fuzzy, they're made out of a fleece stretchy material, and they're really, a pretty good jack of all trades, okay? And then the other wrap I have right now is actually a standing wrap, okay? And this is softer and, not quite as stretchy. It's even got a little shine to it. And what this bandage is actually used for typically is in conjunction with one of these guys, okay? Lots of people have different names for these. I've heard them called quilt wraps, pillow wraps, Nobos, which is a brand name. These are padded wraps that go around your horse's leg before the placement of a bandage to prevent bowing of a tendon. So, your pretty standard pillow wrap would be like this one. I haven't rolled them up yet because I'm going to roll them right before we put them on, but they have a good thick padding to them that really helps protect those limbs, okay? I've got your very basic quilt wrap here. These are spectacular. They're much thinner. They don't have that kind of memory foam feel to them, but can still be used very effectively. And then here I actually have a back on track wrap, which I've had many clients ask me about back on track wraps. They're fantastic. They're actually a recovery tool that we can use in our horses. But this is just one of the ones I have at the clinic just to show you how to use and how to bandage your horse with it. What I'm going to teach you to do first is to wrap with a basic polo wrap. The most important thing you can remember with a polo wrap is to wrap from front to back on the leg, okay? Pushing over tendon and pulling over bone is a surefire way to prevent yourself from bowing a tendon. These polo wraps are excellent for protecting the legs when you're out trail riding on the cross-country course. It can do the job as boots. So as you're seeing, I'm taking even pull over bone passes around this leg. And because I started out up high and wrapped down low underneath the fetlock, I'm actually going to get my Velcro right here at the top. So see, remember, I'm pulling over bone and pushing over tendon to ensure I don't get a bowed tendon. And then at the top, we can just firmly secure that Velcro. So what this does is a good protection, a very basic protection for the limb. It's not gonna offer as much support, and you do have to be very careful when wrapping polo wraps because these are the ones where we see the most tendon bows from improper bandaging. So when doing these, just be really careful, okay, and make sure you only tighten the bandage across the bone, not over the tendon on the back of the leg. As as your veterinarian, we sometimes recommend these to help support the leg, especially if they're going to be stalled for a longer period of time. It can help lymphatic circulation and prevent your horse from stocking up or their legs from swelling up. This can also be great to keep swelling down if your horse has a cellulitis. It can even be really good to help treat an abscess. What these do is they just support the leg. Now, a quilt wrap is going to be one of the least expensive forms of standing wrap you can get. I find they're a little bit trickier to put on, so I really wanted to show you guys how to do this. So what I like to do is I actually keep my standing wrap bandage at the side, okay? And then with the quilt, again, remember, we're always moving from front to back and maintaining a fairly snug wrap around the limb. Now, with your front and back leg standing wraps and polo wraps, you'll be able to tell the difference because your back limb wraps are going to be longer. Holding it fairly firmly, and I'm gonna start at the top of this because this is a really long standing wrap, okay? And remember, I'm going to push over tendon, pull over bone. And the overlap on this standing wrap is going to be much smaller than with the polo wrap. And as you can see, I'm pulling over that bone on the front to make it nice and tight, and then just simply pushing over tendon. Now, the great thing about these standing wraps is there is a little more protection for the tendon, so it's safer to keep them in these guys overnight if they're in the stall, you know, especially if they're wrapped correctly. I always like to give a little bit of support under the fetlock. And as you can see, I'm leaving a little bit of this quilt open at the bottom and the top. And that way, I can just make sure that I'm not putting any undue pressure on that tendon, okay? Pull over bone, push over tendon. And I'm very picky about how my wraps look, so you'll see me trying to smooth out all the wrinkles along the way. And that's really just for aesthetics. But again, we're going to end up with our Velcro at the top of the wrap, okay? And we're going to take this around, keep it nice and flat so it looks pretty, and secure. Perfect. And that's how you do a standing wrap with a quilted wrap, okay? And some people tell you that the Velcro can't be on the inside or on the front. As long as the bandage is wrapped properly, the most important thing is that you're not putting any pressure on these tendons, okay? Over the front of the limb, it's perfectly fine. So make sure you're only tightening on this front hand side as opposed to the back side. So it's the same principle as wrapping a front leg, but as I said, my wrap is actually a little longer than the one for the front leg because their back cannon bones are actually a little longer than their front limbs, okay? So they're made in that standard size. Now, when I'm down here wrapping these horses, I always make sure I've got at least 1 foot on the ground so I can escape as quickly as possible. Hind limbs, as a rule, are the more dangerous ones to wrap. So just always be aware of your surroundings and everything that's going on. So again, with hind leg wrap, I always start from the front and wrap to the back. And when wrapping hind limbs, quicker is sometimes better, okay? With the hind limbs, it's just like the front. You start from the top and work your way down, taking smaller steps with your standing wrap, and pulling over bone to tighten your wrap, pull over bone, and push over tendon. Pull over bone, and push over tendon. Now Chaos here has huge legs, so my really long standing wrap is probably gonna fit him pretty well. However, if your horse has little bitty legs, sometimes you have to double over on yourself. That's okay. Just as long as you remember, pull over bone and push over tendon. So now see, I'm coming back up this way, making sure my wrap is nice and supported and nice and tight. And the reason you're keeping this tight is because it's gonna help the lymphatics in the legs, but it's also gonna keep the bandage on, okay? These guys are experts at shedding them. So as you can see, I've made sure that it's only tightened over the front of the limb, and I'm not constricting any areas. You can still see my bandage wrap underneath, my standing wrap underneath, that is protecting the limb from me putting that bandage on too tightly. Personally, this is my favorite type of standing wrap to recommend for clients to use for support on their horse, just because I think it's the easiest to apply and it's also the safest.